Hello, my name is Claire White, and I'm going to be going over my AIP project that I did for my technology class. And that is electronic use to help with behavior and literacy skills. Most of this is going to focus on literacy skills because that was what I was trying to improve the scores in. But I do mention behavior a lot in this presentation because of the groups that I work with. I work with first and second grade autism spectrum students that are low level learners. So my problem statement here pretty much goes over how if there is potential benefits in utilizing literacy technology in the classroom, Miller, McIntyre, and Lint fostering no matter what kind of technology a teacher chooses to integrate into the classroom, the technology must require a higher order of thinking skill. So thinking about that and thinking about my students, would using some kind of technology instill them to love reading and literacy and gain those necessary skills they need to be successful. Many students in the first and second grade autism classroom struggle to meet grade level expectations on alternative assessment. To address this challenge, teachers must identify interventions that capture students' attention while simultaneously building phonics and comprehension skills. By finding an effective online literacy intervention, teachers can not only improve the outcomes in their classroom, but also in other autism and alternative assessment classrooms throughout the district. Without adequate intervention, students may be unable to meet their alternative assessment goals. To solve this problem, teachers may incorporate a new online technology literacy application or website. I looked at my classroom and I saw that we were lower in our alternative assessment goals than I wanted us to be, and that I really thought that this could be a beneficial thing for us to include. Why this problem? So my classroom needs, I have low level learners that are on an alternative assessment, which is based off Iowa core standards and or Iowa essential elements, which is what the alternative version of Iowa core is for students with ID, which is intellectual disabilities. And we really needed something for some of those students that just I wasn't getting their attention by doing the activities I was doing with them. I felt like they were unmoved by anything I was doing, and I really wanted something to focus in on those kids. In our classroom, because we were going below the alternative assessment grade level, I really wanted to focus it on literacy. Um, Pretty much K through third in Iowa, it really focuses on those Iowa essential elements and that alternative assessment literacy piece as what you're going to collect data from at the very beginning. And I wanted to make sure that my students were getting everything they needed. Um, but also, it was going to deal with some behavioral concerns. Most of the students in my class had been in a classroom that was right before mine that they only used electronics for fun. So it was YouTube, games, whatever they could find, watching clips of movies. But they had actually never used it for instruction. And so when I had tried it previously, I had a whole bunch of issues and lots of behaviors. And I really wanted to figure out a plan of what I could do with this literacy instruction to also help with those behavioral concerns. This is kind of my research and literature page. I'm not going to go over all of them like huge detail, just for time constraints, but the Apova Bucci 2022 article was one that like my study really focused on because it talked about the need for students who are struggling and to reach their goals and the importance of um, how you can adjust strategies in your classroom, and a great way to do this would be technology. Um, the Utzler and Stam et al. One is about was specifically about using handheld devices to improve literacy skills, which is what I was going to be doing. And then the Knight Brown one, it was really about the the focus was about improving the skills of severe disability students by using this video prompting. And the one thing I really took from that article was they were repetitive to get the students to understand um, what exactly they wanted them to improve on, so that I knew that I was going to have to use repetition. So I had three choices. The first one I had was to do a web-based lesson and instruction. So everything would be online. It wouldn't be me. The students would be watching it and listening for the instruction. The next option was Boom Learning Cards, which would also be along with teacher-led instruction to improve those goals. And then the other one was a Homer Literacy app, which was a possible option for delivering literacy instruction. It was kind of like a hands-on, but it also was more student-led. So I ended up choosing Boom Learning. So the great thing about Boom Learning was um, I could modify all they're called decks, like a deck of cards. Um, I could modify all the decks to meet my students' needs. I could modify it. Um, I could add voiceover if I wanted. Um, but they are really made for students that have those low academic skills. So I liked it and I thought it was going to be easier because it would be following up with some of the in-person instruction I was doing over literacy and letters. Um, so I really just thought that this was hands down going to be the easier way. It was also pretty easy to use for the kids because my students had not really used anything for instruction in the past. I wanted something very simple. Um, so the week one, this is kind of my implementation plan. On the right hand side, it talks about, introducing them to boom cards, then getting some baselines, and then taking some, um, you know, data. So, um, the one thing that happened in week one. So, week one, we're just going to introduce the students to boom learning. So, we're just going to get them on the app, let them explore it. I did not um, make them just look at the literacy apps. I did start them out with the literacy apps, but I also let them play around in the Boom Learning. Um, some of the students that did some of the literacy activities, I had never seen perform the way they did when they did on the iPad. I had one student in particular that was very, hasn't really showed me much that he knew literacy wise, but he did really well on alphabet recognition. Um, we also really ran into the problem that my students are very addicted to their electronics, and there were a couple students that struggled to understand that we were going to use this for instruction and instruction only. And they kept trying to get off and go to YouTube, and it was super frustrating for me and them. But I also knew that was a really um, important thing to get right. Also, I was going to lessen the amount of students because I tried to do it with all 12. It was overwhelming for me and them. So I just decided I was going to focus on four students. Um, I have this little tip, this little picture that's going to pop up here um, for you. I'm just going to let it load. It's this little video of him. If you my clear touch in the classroom, and he's just obsessed with it. He can't get away from it when it's on. It takes a lot of redirecting. So it's just kind of to show you what all goes into the fact that I was trying to get the behaviors to change. Um, so side. All right. So the next week, I'm gonna go back to my slideshow, sorry. Um, so the next week, I just focused on these four students. Here's my little cuties. I gave them different names. I'm not going to put their names on the side. I did have permission to put their pictures in here. So I had three boys and one girl that I was going to do it with. They're adorable. These are what the screens look like on the things I was focusing on. So I ended up deciding during when I was doing it with these four that when I was trying to do reading comprehension, like I was doing a story and then trying to get them asking questions, but I was also doing letter recognition was becoming way, 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 way too much. So I just decided I was going to do only letter recognition and letter sound recognition. Um, so I was going to focus on the four ones and I was going to use these two slides or these two decks. Um, and then I was going to shorten practice times and increase incentives. Incentives might be like Skittles, break time, things like that. Week three was more practice. So I added some new boom cards or new decks to it. And then we had two students that really improved a lot. Like were showing me that they wanted to do the activity, or finding the beginning sounds, or finding the alphabet. And one was a higher level learner, and one was the lower level learner in my room. And then I had two students that had a lot of behaviors doing week three, where they were hitting me and not wanting to do the activity and not being able to focus. And so I realized that I was really going to have to up those incentives. Week four was my data collection for after all this repetition. So I was practicing, practicing, practicing for the first 3 weeks. And then I was going to data collect to see um, how we did. We did have some more behaviors, but the great thing is I did see improvement with all of them. How I reduced the behaviors after I was having so many as I broke it down into little parts. So instead of doing all 26 slides that were on a deck for the alphabet, I shortened it to like five, 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 and five, or you know, or like I only did a few at a time and then I reinforced or gave a break. Here is my findings or kind of how I feel like the evaluation of this intervention went. So even with the behaviors I saw, I still had an increase in all my students. If you look over, there's a huge jump. I'm not going to say that the students didn't have that knowledge before. I'm going to say that their stamina of looking at the screen and actually answering the questions um, improved over time, which I felt like improved their scores. I did see from the Estler et al. Research that among 61 of the studies that they did on literacy, um, as long as they were consistent, there was always at least half were reported as a gain. So there was like some that were not reported as a plus, but um, I really feel like that kind of backs up what I saw is that there was gain. If as long as I repeated, we had gains. Some strengths and weaknesses. So some strengths that I had and the growth, I saw lots of growth in the students when it came to stamina and improvement in their recognition. It was a really easy thing to use and it was free, so I didn't have to pay money for it. The kids were able to do it. And then weaknesses were the quality. Um, some of the things that I used were not very quality based. Time, I feel like I needed more than 4 weeks. And then of course there was all the behaviors that came with it. Kind of my reflection, the benefits of working were because I could do the background research, background work and complete the research. Why the technology, why was this the good one? Or why did I want to use technology? And again, it goes back to the APOVA thing where when studying the use of handhelds in the classroom, um, we saw a huge uptick in kids paying attention because we're using this technology instead of just using our regular instruction. This is kind of what that goes into. So we saw better gains because we switched it up. Kind of my um, how does this AIP project improve? Well, the 21st century classroom, self-paced, immediate feedback, student-centered, hands-on. And then for my final thing, what was the difference between method and trial and error? So method is I got to figure out what we were doing, what we were going to incorporate, all the uses, all the technology, and then implement it. And I was prepared for obstacles. Trial and error, I'm just going in and just making last minute changes and going throughout the obstacles without a solution. That's the end.